Hello, everyone. I'm Michael J. Penny. This is 5 Paragraph. We're doing this. Yesterday, I was interrupted. Um, Pretty interesting story. I encountered some dogs at a walk, and animal control came by the house, and they were pounding on my door while I was going live. So I wrapped it up around the ask. Kind of glad that I did that, actually, because it now allows me the opportunity to kind of take a tactical pause. We're going to start back over at the top, page 34. I'm going to get into a little bit of this information, start going through it, and carry it over into page 37. If you're following along in the book, 5 Paragraph Business Plan. If you see on there just this book:/bit.ly link, click on that mother trucker and go ahead and get the 5 Paragraph Business Plan. The action-oriented business management tool for leaders. Look at that. That guy. See, like, I didn't come up with these graphics or anything. I think they're kind of cool. You know, I mean, they're on the front of the book. But I was just kind of like standing there, checking stuff out. You know what I mean? Anyway. All right, so 5 Paragraph Business Plan, page 34 through 37. Top of the page, we're going to talk about developing the documentation. And last time we were discussing pro forma. For those of you who don't understand what pro forma means, like I didn't understand what pro forma meant when I ventured down this trail. It just means that you're creating documentation out of politeness. You're doing it for the betterment of another party who's viewing this documentation. That's it. Okay, so one of the biggest lumps in my throat that I needed to get over was I am assuming things. I am going out there and assuming things. I get it. You don't have a crystal ball. None of us do. I know a few of us who wish that we did. What we're talking about here is taking the intelligence that you gathered from up front and then put it into the pro forma documentation. Okay, so as you're going through and you're developing the business model and the numbers themselves, on a simple spreadsheet, you're going through a cost you're breaking it down so that you can get a break-even analysis, okay? And we were talking about that in the previous video before in regard to 32 and 33 and starting with your break-even analysis and getting all the way down to your EBITDA, or however you choose to value your company whenever it comes time to figure out how that exit strategy for the company, whether you're going to move towards IPO or whatever you're going to wind up doing. That is not the individual's exit strategy. We're going to talk about that in this video. We are also going to talk about the logistics portion of it. We talk about these things immediately following the ask. Okay, so I put it personally into this area or this block, not only because it fits immediately following, hey, we're asking for this amount of money, this amount of leeway, this amount of time, whatever the case calls for, whatever the project calls for, and then we're plugging those variables into this portion of the 5 Paragraph Business Plan. All right. Immediately afterwards, we're discussing in itemized detail that which we need in order to carry the mission out. Okay, so we're going to talk just, we'll flutter across it a little bit here and then wrap it up with command and signal. And that is going through how you're going to communicate and then the management team that you're going to be operating with, right? Everybody needs a purpose. Everybody better have a purpose if they're going to be on the management team. So, excuse me while I adjust. You like this? That was the issue. This is a piece of test gear right here. It said you could do the survey and keep the fleece. So I kept the fleece. I like that. All right, so, excuse me, I'm going to take a sip of coffee here. I steal my wife's mugs. All right, let me set that down. Okay, so developing the documentation. What you're doing is taking your intelligence from the situation paragraph, that which you gathered when you were stepping outside of the building, you were doing some of that market research, you were engaging with some of your potential customer base, and how did you know who you were going to speak with? You did a salute report. you identify through an avatar what the ideal male, female customer, and then who their adjacent, I call them the people who are going to get them to the sell. All right. And I say it that way because there are a lot of customers out there, sometimes myself included, where my wife will drive me to go and then commit to a purchase that is entirely mine. It's for me. It's whatever the case may be. Sometimes it's programs. Sometimes it's services. It might be, for instance, let's say, for instance, Hakoa. Hakoa sometimes would market, let's say, to one of the ideal customers on either side, male, female, spouses, in order to encourage the other to contact, right? So that's a natural fit within the realm of homeowners. Okay, so pretty cool. There are other things that have a much heavier male dominant audience or a much heavier female dominant audience, and maybe their counterpart is going to introduce them to that audience, right? Or that good service, product, widget, whatever the case may be. All right, so you're developing pro forma. Pro forma essentially is spreadsheets. We went over through the different financial statements that are necessary and what needs to be created. I do a deep dive in the tutorial episodes. Look them up, tutorials.5paragraph.com. We go thoroughly in depth into the necessary financial stuff, but I want you to know also, like, don't get overwhelmed by it. I myself am not a finance guy. I'm not a financial major. I'm not an accountant. I know enough to be dangerous to be able to put stuff onto a spreadsheet so that we can see whether or not the numbers fit. It's more or less knowing how to work Excel more than it is, and being able to understand what the correct numbers are given your scenario and where to go and locate those numbers so that you can plug in the correct numbers into that spreadsheet and get a proper cost X overall. All right, so that was the last video in creating our pro forma. We've delivered that pro forma. We have the documentation. That right there is the foundation. It's going to bolster your ask, your proposal. It might be the overarching, just what you need of other individual organizations, such as your supporting companies that you've already listed before in the document. So you might go to a supporting agency, you give them the whole kind of rigmarole as far as a battle plan is concerned, and in this portion of your battle plan, as you're talking with one of your supporting companies that's out there, you ask them for that which you need, and then you back that up. And so what you're doing is you're saying desired financing, maybe you have an offering, you have a deal, capitalization needs, that might be a line of credit, it might be a convertible note, you're going angel investors, venture capitalists, might be going to community development financial institutions, which is a great source of capital, and it's way cheaper money than a lot of other areas that you would go. You might specifically be working with capital investors on a different note, on a different line of credit concerning your own individual project, and so you need to put together a proposal specifically for them. Investors' returns, and so that leads into the exit strategy. And so if you have an investor, if you have people that are coming into the organization, this is the exit strategy. So you have how the company is going to grow and where you're going to steer it towards, whether that's perpetual private ownership, you want to go to an initial public offering and offer it on a public exchange. This is in NASDAQ, Wall Street, or whatever the case may be. You might, for instance, want to move it to merger acquisition to one of the bigger names that are out there. Whatever the case may be, then you need to put down in writing what your exit strategy is going to be for the individuals that are already tied up in the ownership of the company after the investors are out of the organization, typically. Unless the investors, for some reason, want to carry that organization or stay with that organization in the long term, post-IPO, whatever the case may be, it's your exit strategy to devise, but it belongs right there before you go into the logistics of things. you're asking for things and you're describing exactly how so you're asking for money, and then you're going to describe what the timetable looks like on when you're going to give it back. And then you say, this is literally how we're going to go about all of this. And here are the people that are the responsible individuals that are going to carry out the mission. That's why it's compact like that. So everything has built to this moment. If you're, into storytelling the way that I am, you're basically getting towards this climax, so to speak, within your overall plan. And this is how I describe it in the tutorial episodes also. So you get to this climactic moment within your plan, and that is your ask. And if you provide a proper ask, a proper exit strategy, the logistics to carry it out, and everything else, you'll have a happy ending, right? And I don't mean to skip logistics, but getting into command and signal in a couple of minutes here, you'll see how that crescendo kind of peers off, so to speak. And when you get into the signal and into the command and signal, even though you'll see how the paragraphs are structured, and I purposely structured those identical to the military operations order. When you get into this is where you see whether or not you have a happy ending, because they're going to heavily scrutinize who your people are. Any good investor would. They would say, why does that person need to be a part of this? So, all right. In the logistics, you're talking about the moving parts associated with, first of all, I say routine business in basic logistics inside of this. It is routine for the business to be able to function. Remember, this is based on the 3 timelines that we were talking about before. So you have you have actionable, priority, and then you have routine. Okay, so routine just has to happen the entire time in order for the basics for the business to be able to be carried out. And then you have those actionable timelines that are necessary to build those individual structures to carry out the routine. All right, you already talked about that timeline. This is what it looks like to come to market. You already talked about that actionable timeline. This is the logistics that's necessary to carry out that routine timeline that you discussed previously inside of the plan. When you're going through the plan and you're reading through it and you're fingering through the plan, it all lines up because you're asking yourself the question that is about to be answered. And it's the exact same structure as what we use in the military op order. That's the reason why it works. It's because it's not painted over. The structure holds. The business template, organization, whatever you want to call it, expertise, knowledge goes inside of our structure. And we cite all of those on the resources page inside of the book as well. So in logistics, you're talking about your supply chain management. You're talking about your construction, transportation, inventory management, warehouse management, customer care, hospitality care, just additional logistics concerns that are out there in order to carry out your mission. And all of those logistics concerns fit within that routine timeline just to be able to carry out the overall operation. This leads into the sustainment model for a long-term sustainment. Bear in mind, this is a situationally dependent operation model, okay? So that way you can go in, you can conduct a job, you can do whatever the case may be, all in use in the 5 paragraph. You can build a huge vision for how you want to carry out your overall organizational mission over the next 3 to 5 years and carry that out. All right, so each one of these different key components within the logistics model are leading into the sustainment of the overall operation, whether that's going towards merger acquisition, IPO, CDF5 loan, whatever the case may be. All right, and then adjacent units out of the situation paragraph, they're the ones who can help you out with logistics. Also, supporting elements, they are potentially helping you out with logistics. You have already named them in the situation paragraph. Last but certainly not least, command and signal. That's company leadership and customer care. Now, in the op order, it starts with signal and then command management team. All right. The reason why it does that is because you have a primary, alternate, contingent, and then an emergency signal, along with your corresponding methods of communication. So some organizations primarily focus on Slack communication, let's say, for instance, or text communication, phone call communication, whatever the case may be. So primary might be Slack communication, alternate might be email, contingent would be a text message, and emergency would be a phone call. Let's say, for instance, it's your pace plan, do whatever you want. The communication to leadership and the go-to processes for given scenarios, it's based on whether or not you have an emergent scenario in front of you. So you back up from there. Is this an emergency? Okay, if it is, 911, do whatever you got to do as far as an emergency, and then contact via phone that individual, whomever your leader is, via this plan. Okay, so that's all that you're basically putting on there. The way that I look at this is, and the way that I write this all of the time, is the exact same way that I would write something for a babysitter. So if you're going to be babysitting the kids, this is my primary, alternate, contingent, and emergency communication method if you're going to be watching the children. And I've got to be able to do that in a super simple way and be able to provide scenarios to where it's like, don't call me if this happens. You know what I'm saying? And so like the house is on fire, 911's the first one, okay? Right, so that's the scenario allows them to basically cross off the checklist. And it starts, I mean, me personally, I start with whether or not it's an emergency, and then I work my way back up. All right, and then the command management team, the location of the key leaders, that's where they work, not where they live. Succession of command, and that's the hierarchy of authority and responsibility. So where does the buck stop? So with 5 paragraphs, stops with me. I have a number of people that are on the team. We have 5 that are on the internal, and then we have 4 additional advisors and a number of different, call them associates, let's say, for instance, that are across the country that are operating in a number of different capacities. Those people serve a purpose. If they don't serve a purpose, then why we wouldn't work together, you know what I mean? So this is probably one of the most scrutinized pages, especially if you're going to be looking, paragraphs, if you're going to be looking at seeking investors. Every other investor is going to want to know why those people are on the team and whether or not they have any money, equity, sweat, capital invested, whatever the case may be. There is a capitalization chart that we work with folks on when they're doing their operating agreements. There are operating agreements, so if you need help in putting those things together, which I myself have been burned on an operating agreement before and have worked with the right people in order to put you in touch with. That's the easiest way to put it. I don't make myself a legal expert by any means. If you would like to go that route, there are proper folks that we could put you in touch with. If you would like to lay it out in this format, whatever the case may be, you can do that. And then the command management portion of this, you do a capitalization table. And then you figure out what it looks like as far as when equitable partners come in and what a capitalization looks like, or maybe a vested interest looks like over time. Something to look at if you're in the vision process of what your organization is going to do in the long term. I tell folks all the time, if you're going to put an operating agreement into your business plan, I would put it as an appendix so that people see that you have an operating agreement, but it's still close to your vest. That's not necessarily something that needs to immediately be up front. However, on the capitalization table, what I would do is put what their interest is if they have it. Maybe not necessarily how they're vesting it. Later on, once the discussion progresses and before they actually sign in as an investor and everybody's a good fit, of course, they're going to see the operating agreements. And then you can see how that vested interest accrues over time. And so all that it boils down to is you have an individual who might, oh, I don't know, they earn 2.5% annual. So every year they're going to earn 2.5% equity in the organization. Or you can do it to where it breaks down over a given period of time. There's a number of different ways to do it. And again, that's when I rely on legal advice in order to help somebody through it if they have a difficult operation. But honestly, that's something to where if you talk about your operating agreement and you figure out what the prenup looks like, the divorce is a hell of a lot easier. And so if you talk about all of that stuff up front with your business partners, if you're going to have business partners, and how you're going to put together your documentation and who the fiduciary responsibility ultimately lands on once it gets that big kind of a deal, yeah, that's something that you definitely want to discuss up front, and I would highly recommend, and that's something that we can help you with, and we can put you in touch with other folks who can help you in a much more in-depth manner. All right, so on page 37, and wrapping this up, you will see another MET-TTL team and support, well, a MET-TTL box, a text box, and these text boxes are throughout the book. I mentioned before, MET-TTL. It's something that we use inside of the troop leading staffs. It's something that you walk into the command operations center. They fill you in on what you're going to do. You go, you create your entire operations order. You back brief your hire. You go out and carry out your mission. Or excuse me, you go out and provide, if you need to adjacent leaders that are out there, your own MET-TTL, and then each one of those subordinate leaders go off and carry out their own operations order. And identically to that, we are doing the same thing here with the 5-paragraph business plan. Some folks, some fellow veterans that are out there, and myself included, I was not taught MET-TTL in the military. That back end, it's the longest form of MET-TT. Let me put it to you that way. I learned MET-TT. That's what I learned. And I learned it that way because I was a grunt. And so space and logistics was not necessarily something that I worried myself on very much. The space means that I need to understand what the battle space is and the area of operations are overall, but also what a building that I'm going to be occupying, right? So it's not just the location of your area of operation, it's a building. As a grunt, I didn't have any buildings that I necessarily maintained until we had patrol bases. There are other MET-TTC, right? There's a command and control element of it. Okay, so the point, though, is MET-TT is the building block. The reason why we use space and logistics is because if you're going to be operating at a brick and mortar, define your space. And of course, logistics are necessary in conducting business and business operations. MET-TT, Military Universal, the back end of that, if you want to call it an acronym, call it METSL, the back end of that then rotates, essentially. So MET-TTL, that's what we use. We call it MET-TTL throughout the book. You will see the MET-TTL book or text boxes throughout the book. You'll see it right here. And so all that's describing is where it belongs inside of METSL or MET-TTL, and this is the team and support portion of it. And so what you can do is take the details that you filled in here and plug it into your MET-TTL. It's pretty much that. I mean, you're following along and you're reading through the book, right? And you don't necessarily need to carry the template with you. Where's the template? It's page 59. Page 59. So if you look in here, we do a full salute report. So time, you'll see what I'm talking about. Go to page 59 and you'll see what I'm talking about. But there is your MET-TTL template. So the point being, and you'll see this in future videos because I'm just going to go through the entire book, right? And I want to lay this out for you folks so that you really have an understanding of what we're looking to provide you guys overall as far as value up front. And I really believe that we've created something special as a team here. So I have no problem walking through it as a course of study. But if when you get the book, go to page 59, you'll see the Met TTSL template. Well, Mike, why didn't you give us this template up front? We did. We gave you the understanding of the template up front. As you're walking through the text, you will see the text boxes. When you get to the back end of the book, and I believe I've already done a live video on this, and it's the very next section right here. When you get to, so I could wrap it up with this. When you get to 38, 39, and you'll probably remember this if you watch the other Go Lives, you've got the orientation and the executive summary. So when you go through 38, 39, and then 40, it goes through Met TTSL. Again, we don't give you a blank template. We give you the understanding of it. So that way when you go through 41 and then 42, you'll see the Met TTSL template and how it breaks down. And then you'll see how this being the leadership template, that being the subordinate leadership template, it just carries across. And we work with your teams on that. If that's something to where, you said, hey, we want you to come in and do a training package or a training evolution or something, the numbers will fit. We can, figure that out for you guys. With HACOA, the home repair network, what we did is we went in and did a baseline vision of what they really wanted to achieve, created a 5-paragraph business plan on what the expansion would look like as far as what their offerings are. And it's very simple, very, very simple. I wouldn't necessarily call it easy. I would say that it's easy for us at this point, but we breezed right through it as far as a vision understanding is concerned, put it together, built out the package, and then in taking their vision and putting it through the Met TTSL filter, so to speak, then you have each one of the individual unit owners' origins of their own business plan. So that's why it's a great fit for franchise licensing models. You're taking, if you're following along and you're on page 40, and you're really paying attention to what I'm saying to you right now, once you have the vision, it's about 50% of the plan carries over to the next leader's plan. Okay, so the components of that vision carry over to the business owner in whatever the new territory is for HACOA. So once we get through the vision of your expansion, then as we go into these different units, that business plan is, so long as we did the proper work on the vision, that business plan is going to already start 50% off in creating that next project, whatever the case may be, or that department, again, whatever the case may be. But this is something that we work with people on. It's, very, very, very cut and dry, very simple. Once you understand how to put together your 5-paragraph, you've built the elements of it, and then you hold that 5-paragraph on the left, you hold your clean template on the right, and then you start drawing elements of it over to the right. That's it. And that's exactly how this diagram, if you're following along, it's on page 42. That's exactly how the diagram's set up. And this will look, so we created this diagram ourselves entirely from scratch. You'll find similar diagrams that are in military text. Of course, we couldn't do the same. We needed to find something that was going to be 5-paragraph business plan. That doesn't exist out there already, obviously. So we created our own stuff from scratch. This is probably, this in the back of the book, that diagram, are the 2 items that we truly created 100% from scratch, so to speak. I say it that way because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're bringing together these 2 known working wheels in the 5-paragraph and the nuts and bolts of great business plans and putting those 2 things together. So you, when you're all done, you have the knowledge of how Met TTSL fits together. Okay? And then me personally, I wanted you to have the knowledge in understanding the fragmentary order. This is another go live that we're going to do in understanding the intelligence breakdown, and it's the same diagram as what's on the back of the book, and then that leads into the actual pitch. We call it a pitch. The pitch is for anybody. The pitch is even essentially what your conveyance or your pitch, your presentation is to your own team. So we're going to put together a presentation of what is actually going to take place and what everybody is expected to do it in this format. It's a 14 slide format, and we'll go through it. All of that before we get to page 59, where you actually see your first Met TTSL template. So that'll be the first time that you're asking the big questions of yourself, your team, your organization, and you're filling out your first Met TTSL. At that point, you start scanning back through the book. And I've chatted with numerous folks on this, and they have notes that are all throughout their book. They'll go back and forth. It's awesome. That's exactly how we designed it, so that it's very, very, very simple. You don't have to do back and forth if you truly don't want to. Me personally, what I like doing is, and I can show you this. So when I'm working with you guys, what I do is I take a paper clip at the top of the page and I bundle up my pages, right? So if I were to go through Met TTSL, let's say for instance, right here at the end of the book, and I'll go all the way back here. So let's say that I was wrapping up, yeah, and I needed those pages. What I've done before is I just paper clip the pages that I need to go on. I mean, this is just, this is not something that you have to do by any means. It's not necessarily how we structured the book. But what I like to do is just paper clip these pages, yoink, so that I can go back and forth. And then I can fill out my template wherever I am in the book. I mean, I'm a guy who learned how to live in a hole in the ground, living in the military and going overseas and all of this other stuff. The easier and the simpler that you can make it, the better off you're going to be in the long term. So if I can just throw a paper clip on top and flip in between my executive summary page on 38 and then Met TTSL, which is the executive summary template on page 59, all by using I don't even need both paper clips. You know what I'm saying? So just keeping it super simple, giving you guys a text that you can carry with you. It fits everywhere. It fits in every binder known to man. I'll pull open one of my black binders here on the next go around, and I'll show you how versatile this thing truly is. So in the upcoming video, and I'll fix my clips because I'll do the upcoming video later on today probably. I have no idea. Yep, so in the upcoming video, what I'll do is I'll talk about the fragmentary order. Maybe I already talked about the fragmentary order. Maybe I didn't. But we're going to discuss using the 5-paragraph business plan, as an operational leader. All right, so that'll be in the next one, and we'll probably get all the way through, depending, we might even get all the way through to our pitch deck. So guys, gals, we're going to continue to go through the book. I also have a number of different texts that are over my shoulder here that I am honestly very, very eager to share with you guys. This is something that I did as a director of programs, and I love being able to share knowledge, and I hope that you guys share your knowledge with me in the comments section. Also, this is going to be a part of an ongoing blog series. Please, by all means, leave your comments below. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Yeah, I mean, you guys are just awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your faith in 5-paragraph, in our military understanding knowledge, where we're coming out of, and keeping it super simple. Don't get overwhelmed, and it's really easy to get just worked up. All you need to do is continue to go through and just work that plan, and it will work if you work it. So, All right, thanks, folks. Thank you so much for your time. Take care, be well, and follow us again on another Facebook Live.